Hi, lovely souls. I'm Jessi Lee Ross of Lone Folk Studio, and in today's little life chat video, I would like to talk about the question of why does no one hear me? And go through 4 potential reasons why people might not be listening to you. So, this is a topic that is near and dear to my current life struggle. I am spending a lot of time working through things and thinking about this topic, so I thought I would share with you my little tips and things, topics of discussion and questions for yourself. Because they've really been helping me, and maybe if this is something that resonates with you, that you feel like people don't really hear you when you speak, then hopefully maybe you can get something out of it too. So number 1 is maybe you have never found your voice in the first place. It comes to this question of, if you're not listening to yourself, why should anyone else? If you've never taken the time to get to know your voice, your internal voice, who you are, what you sound like, what you want to say, how you want to show up in the world, why is it anyone else's responsibility to listen to you? So it's a kind of a really simple thing of, if you take the time to get to know yourself more, maybe people will start listening to you more. They can actually hear you and see you. So that's why I think that this vocal work is so important. This finding your soul note, this vocal toning, singing, just letting your voice come out, because that directly relates to who you are and how you are showing up in the world. And it gives you a chance to actually become acquainted with your voice and become friends with your voice and who you are, so that you can present yourself in a way that people can much more easily connect to. The second one is boundaries, or lack thereof. This relates to number 1 too. If you're not listening to yourself, why should anyone else? But this one is more directed at the boundaries that you build between people. People are going to respond to those boundaries that you present to them. And I guess the question is, have you ever even asked someone to listen to you? Or do you have this mentality, this like intrinsic belief about yourself that they don't need to? You don't consider yourself worthy enough to say something worth listening to. And so even though you really want to speak and you want to be heard, you are presenting with this already prerequisite of that you're already defeated. You already know that they're just not going to listen. If other people don't listen, why should this person? And it's okay if they don't, because my self-worth is so low that I don't really actually believe that what I have to say is worthy of hearing. And obviously I get really worked up about this one, because I know that I have some very deep-seated beliefs about myself and whether or not what I have to say is worthy of being said. And if I give a little personal backstory to this, if I may, for a moment, when I was little, I actually had a very interesting way of speaking, and most adults that came into contact with me just couldn't understand what I was saying. For some reason, it was as though I was speaking a different language. And, I was so young, I don't remember this, but I do remember a lot of adults getting really mad at me because they just didn't understand what I was saying. And so actually, my mother was the one who understood me, and she would actually have to explain to people what I meant to, dampen their anger towards me and help them to understand what I was actually saying. So she was sort of my rock to explain myself to the rest of the world, because other people just didn't understand what I was saying. Fast forward, and actually she disappeared from my life. She stepped out of my life. I haven't spoken to her in 7 years. She just chose to not be a part of my life anymore. And what I kind of took that as was just a moment of, oh shit, if she's gonna just disappear, she doesn't understand me anymore, then I guess just no one's gonna understand me. I guess, that's it. I'm just to be forever misunderstood, forever misheard, forever just, yeah, just left on my own. And, that's been something that's been a huge struggle for me in the past couple years, because I know it's not true, but it's such a deep-seated belief within myself that it's really hard to break. And that's what happens with traumas. We take little bits and pieces of what happened to us and we accept them as true. We accept them as truths, as deep beliefs, and then they basically become our personality. And so I can actually hear it within myself. Making these videos has been huge for me, honestly, because I can hear myself in my body language and in the way that I'm saying something, kind of already giving that permission for someone to not listen, for someone to sort of trail off. And I hear it in my day-to-day conversations too. I start out already with the belief that you're not going to hear me, or I don't know what I'm talking about, or what I'm saying is not worthy of taking up that space. So I'm already giving this pre-excuse for the person watching or listening to just stop listening. And because I've already excused you, there's no reason not to. And then I leave just thinking like, oh, well, there's just another example of someone not listening to me. That just kind of, continuously creates my reality of people not hearing me, because I'm already showing up in this situation with this deep-seated belief, this lack of boundaries, this lack of understanding of my worth. And I allow my voice to trail off. I allow my body language to shrink. I allow myself to become small. And I'm really working on that. And I'm really proud of myself for the way that I'm growing. But it's just funny to see how, people are going to treat you the way that you tell them that they're allowed to treat you. And most of the time people would feel really bad if they knew what they were doing to you. They don't even actually consciously know that they're doing it. They're just sort of following the rules that you're setting out for them. So if you never actually ask for someone to listen to you, then why would they? They're just behaving in the way that you're telling them to. They are treating you the way that you are asking them to treat you. And that's kind of just how boundaries go. And it's really hard to break that. And that's something that I'm currently learning, of how to change these boundaries within these relationships, especially relationships that have been established over a long period of time. It's really hard to change the boundaries that you've set up between you and that other person, or the people that you come into contact with. It's 30 years for me of holding a certain belief. It's not going to change overnight, but it's something that's really important to get inquisitive about and recognize these little behaviors within yourself and these beliefs that you hold that you definitely want to change, and would live a much more fulfilling life and have much more fulfilling relationships if you actually knew how to ask for what you need from that person. So that is a huge one. That is a huge, huge, huge one. Number 3 is perhaps you are in a transitional period. This one is also very relevant to where I am right now. If you're in a transitional period, you might still be finding yourself surrounded by the people that are most familiar with the old you. You are in a growth stage, you're finding yourself, you're actually freeing your voice, and people are used to who you used to be. And perhaps that's what you're speaking about, is just kind of not where they're at, and they find it hard to hear you. They find it hard to listen to and connect with and resonate with what you are saying. And that's a really difficult stage to be in, because when you're in a transitional period, obviously you're going through a lot of changes, maybe a lot of difficult awakenings. Sometimes it's exciting, but it's sometimes not really that easy of a place to be. And so you hope that the people around you are going to be supportive and understanding, And it's not that they don't want to be, it's just that we have to keep in mind and be empathetic about the fact that your journey is not everyone else's journey. People are not always going to be right where you're at, and sometimes they just can't connect with what you're going through because it's not their journey. So it's really hard to not get hurt by the fact when you feel unheard, when you're trying to talk to someone about what you're going through, what's going on in your life, and they just seem a million miles away. It's really hard to not get hurt by that, and it sucks that you do get hurt, that it's a painful experience. But what helps is to just try to understand that not everyone is going to be at where you're at. And not only that, a lot of times when you're in a transitional period too, and when you start to find your voice and you're letting it out, a beautiful thing that can happen from that is that you give other people the permission to let their voice come out, and they get inspired by you, and they do want to listen, and then they want to go do their own thing. But what also happens sometimes is you finding your voice ignites insecurity in people, and it can ignite jealousy. It can ignite just the inability to be able to hear what you're saying. They aren't in a place where they want to see their own light and go through that process. So they don't want to listen to yours. And again, it's really unfortunate and it's painful to be experiencing that. But at the same time, like I said, being empathetic to that this person just might not be ready to hear what you have to say yet. And that is okay. Maybe never. Maybe they never will. And that's okay because like I said, that's your journey. That's not theirs. Not everyone is going to be where you are. And it sucks. It gets really lonely sometimes when you're going through these big changes and it feels like all the people around you just don't understand and they're kind of falling away from you. But you have to keep on your path and you have to keep finding your voice and speaking it where it is appreciated, because it will be appreciated. And the whole point of it is you releasing your voice is going to attract those people that want to listen, that want to hear you and see you and communicate with you. They want to make that connection more than just hearing you. They want to be there with you and they want to expand and release their voices together. So that's the whole goal of sticking through this transitional period and just knowing that you might go through a fairly lonely stage where some relationships sort of fall off, and that is okay. Everyone needs to go through the journey that they need to go through, and it doesn't need to be taken as something personal against you or that they don't love you or anything like that. And like I said, it's very difficult in certain moments and it is a shame, but that's just the truth of it. And it doesn't mean anybody loves you any less, just people have to go through what they need to go through when they are ready to go through it, and not everyone is going to be on the exact same path as you. But again, stay true to your path because you will bring in those souls that do want to listen and do want to hear you. And then number 4 is high expectations. The possibility that you have too high of expectations. And this is one that I am currently really struggling with. And it's a hard one to say because part of me wants to lash out and be like, what do you mean I have high expectations for thinking that someone should hear me? That's just common sense that someone should listen to you. But then I take a step back and realize, it is a hard one to understand, and it's tricky because I do believe that there is a certain level of, basic human decency of listening to someone who's speaking and being reciprocative of that relationship that's happening. But at the same time, you have to understand if this is resonating with you and you feel like you might be in a similar place as I am, you have to understand that not everyone is going to be as good of a listener as you are. Because number one, they probably didn't place their entire sense of self-worth around the fact that they are a good listener, that they are someone who will soak up everything that you have to say and listen to you and make you feel so good. And, that hasn't been their personal struggle like it might have been for you, like it definitely has been for me. I've placed so much of my self-worth around the fact that I can listen, that of course I'm a good listener. That's what I put all of my energy into. And it's crazy of me to expect that everyone else is going to be just as good of a listener as I am. Because again, back to what I was just saying, everyone has their own journey. Everyone has different ways of dealing with the things that they're going through. The way that I was told to stay small in the world resulted in me finding my self-worth in being there for someone else, in being able to be a good listener. Whereas someone else in their journey might have been told to stay small, and their way of handling it was to get really loud because they feel so unheard that they feel they need to be louder. They need to be this big presence. And so they talk a lot, and they talk fast and loud and on top of you, and they just don't listen. And it's funny because that's a different way of dealing with the same issue of being told to stay small throughout their life, and two completely different ways of dealing with it. And it's hard in those moments to be aware of what this other person might be going through, but their way of dealing with their own personal struggle unfortunately stomps on your way of dealing with your personal struggle. So that's really hard to understand. But at least for me, it helps, again, to be empathetic about what other people might be going through, and that they might have gone through the same thing and just dealt with it in a completely different way. And so the way that they are showing up in the world, they aren't as receptive to someone else speaking, especially someone speaking in potentially a quieter manner than what they're used to. And that, again, that doesn't say anything personal against you. It just says where this person is at in their life and the way that they are dealing with the world. And that's just a little example, but yeah, it basically comes down to you having to sort of wrap your head around where your understanding of what it means to listen, where it came from, what is actually a realistic expectation of communicating. And it's good to have, like I said, those boundaries of how you do know that you want to be listened to by the people around you. But it's also important to understand when your expectations are just far too high and you're expecting everyone else to show up and listen in the same, trauma-informed way of listening that you have come to be capable of doing. And not everyone is going to show up that way. So if that's your expectation, you are just setting yourself up for failure. You're setting yourself up to just be disappointed in the way that other humans listen because they're not meeting your standards of listening. So it's a difficult thing to balance out what a healthy expectation is and set those boundaries. And yeah, expect that from certain people in your life, to listen to you in the way that you feel you want to be listened to, but also to understand what an unhealthy expectation is. And when you're placing that on people, it's just far too much pressure to ask them to show up in that way. And yeah, exactly. It's an unhealthy expectation, and you're just setting yourself up to be hurt and to not have fulfilling experiences because your expectations are way up here above what most people can show up as in the world. And yeah, again, going back to that, that thing about your journey is so much different than everyone else's. Some people just might not have ever had to learn how to listen. That might be something that they could learn through you, through being friends with you, and through you, finding a happy medium of your expectations as far as listening and being heard goes. If you have healthy boundaries and healthy communication with this person that you love, then you both can sort of work to find a better place of growth on both ends of the spectrum, and of healthy expectations, and not outrageous expectations that just set you up to be constantly hurt, constantly disappointed, constantly feeling like you're unseen and unheard, because that's just a voice in your head. That's one of your voices that's probably way too loud in your head. And so you need to bring that down, bring down your expectations, and just become familiar with your internal voice, what is a healthy representation of how you wish to be heard and received in the world, and yeah, work from there. So this was a lot of information. I hope that it was helpful. Like I said, I am by no means have this all figured out whatsoever. It's a big current struggle of mine, which is why I just kind of felt compelled to share, these things that are helping me right now to conquer one of the biggest life struggles of mine. So yeah, thank you for listening. As always, thank you for listening. As always, if you would like to check out some of my art, ritual, sound offerings, please visit our website at lonefolks.com, and feel free to reach out if you'd like to talk about this any further. If you have any questions, I would love to connect with you. So thank you for being here.